Now, one thing I want to do is nip back onto the guitar for a second. And the final thing that I wanted to include in this tutorial was a really simple way of recognizing where the notes are on a guitar or a bass. Obviously they're the same on both instruments. I used to struggle when I first started by looking at the entire neck on my guitar and thinking, my God, how on earth am I going to learn what all of those notes are? Pretty daunting stuff. When I have a keyboard, we can see straight away that that is a C, and therefore everything repeats itself, and it's very obvious which notes are which. We can see 12 notes and they're a little block and they look completely different. Therefore it's a lot easier to look at keyboard and to know what the notes are. So how do we best approach doing it on guitar? Well, there's a couple of little shortcuts. If we learn the notes on the first string that we come to, and the first string and the sixth string are exactly the same tuning. So if we learn all of the notes on the first string, we'll already know the notes on the sixth string. Okay? So there are a couple of pivot points there where I can look and see the 2 dots, and I can see 2 dots is always going to be an A, 1 dot is always going to be a G, 3 dots always going to be a B. Where the 2 dots are, that's going to be the octave, so it's always going to be an E. That's going to be a C sharp. Okay, so you can kind of learn immediately open 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 different notes. And the open, 5 notes. Okay. So we can kind of know what those are straight away. But here's a really cool thing. Now most guitarists will play power chords. That's the first kind of chords that anyone learns. A power chord is this shape. In terms of intervals and technical speak, it actually plays the first note and then the 5th note in the scale. Let's prove that to you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's the 5th note in the scale, the perfect 5th. Remember that I've talked about perfect 5ths being really important. That's one of the reasons why. The next note up that we play in the power chord is the octave. That means that this note here is the same as that note. So if I know that that note's an A, I know that that note there is an A. That's pretty easy to remember. Now, in the same way that I remember playing that, in that way, I could do something else. I can actually play this shape, where I've put this and this together. So, see here, I've got where I had my octave, but if I tuck that finger in with a space of 2 in between, I get the octave again. So, check this out then. So if I know that that's an A, that's an A, that's an A, that's an A. So that means I know where the A is on how many strings? 1 string, 2 string, 3 string, 4 string. Just by realizing where the octave is, I can immediately tell where the same note is on 4 different strings. Now that's cutting down my learning time big time. So if I've learnt 1 string, I can tell where the notes are on 4 strings immediately. And that only gives me 2 more strings to learn. Well, there's an easy way of doing that too. Because if I play this shape, where I'm playing my pinky and I'm leaving a space in between of 2, and I jump 1 string across, 2 strings across, and play the next string up. So basically I'm playing the 6th string and the 3rd string. So I'm missing out the 5th and the 4th. I'm playing with a space of 2 in between and this shape here. So I'm not sure if you can see this well on the camera. I'll hold it up to that one as well. So I've got my pinky and I've got a space of 2 in between. Play those. That again is an octave. Now that means that we know now that that string is related by that pattern. Okay? So let's go back to A and add that now by looking at where A is and putting our pinky down. There's A. Make the same pattern and go across onto there's a 6th string. We forget the 5th, the 4th, but the 3rd is the one we want. That's our octave. Put it together. So now that's A as well. So let's do it all together. We've got A there, A there, A there, A there, and A there. That means there's only one string that we don't know. Well, we kind of do know that already, because here's a great thing. We've already learnt that a power chord has the octave on the top. If we play that now on this string, where we know what that note is, and we put in our power chord again, and this time I'm on A, so my power chord will look like this, then there on my 5th string is another A. So this is a power chord shape on the 3rd string and the 5th string, and it's the same power chord shape that tells us where our octave is on the 5th or the 6th string. You can hear that? So that's it. So if you've learnt those different shapes, the first shape, the second shape, that shape you don't need to learn because it's the same. You know that that's the same, it's the same string. This shape, and back to our power chord shape, then we know what all the notes are. Now that for me was by far the easiest way of learning what all the notes on the guitar were. Because it's not just learning what the notes actually are, we've now got a connection with our fingers and how those notes relate to each other. So as we start learning the different scales and the intervals within the scales, everything starts to relate without having to think too much about it. And it becomes, again, a muscle memory. So really important. Everyone has to learn their own way, and everybody has to find ways of doing things for themselves. For me, I like to play and I like to be creative. And the more time that I have to sit and intellectualize something, the less time I've got to do the things I really like. So I always try to come up with ways that I am going to find easy to learn and to kind of motivate myself forward. So when I was a teenager and all the other kids around me were struggling, going, well, I don't understand any of this music theory and I don't understand, you know, what all the notes are, I'd kind of learnt some shortcuts by going away from the instrument and going, well, how could I relate these things for something that works for me? I would draw those things out on sheets of paper, and I would see the combinations, and I would kind of connect those combinations with each other. Because when I'm playing, I don't want to have to think too much about the theory side, and I don't want to have to think too much about where I should or shouldn't go next. It becomes second nature because I already kind of zoned in on the fact that I know where my octaves are, and therefore I know where the particular distances of intervals are and how they're going to sound. That's something that I obviously want to discover for the first time and not intellectualize. So hopefully this first little chunk of learning about the major scale and the diatonics is very useful for you. Again, there is no easy fix, there's no easy solution to learning all of this, but I really recommend doing it because it will open the world of music to you in a completely different way. You have to find the way that it's going to work for you, but once you can bear with it and you can break kind of some of these things of confusion down, it becomes actually very easy. So we're now going to look at the relative minor.